French cinema has always been recognized for its rich storytelling and profound emotional depth. It is known for embracing unique narratives, often focusing on character-driven stories that explore themes of love, existentialism, and human connection. French filmmakers have developed an approach that stands apart from mainstream cinema, prioritizing nuance and subtlety over overt drama or visual spectacle. The industry's long history of producing thought-provoking films has given it a reputation for artistic innovation and emotional sincerity. One of the most distinct characteristics of French cinema is its emphasis on storytelling, which often delves into the complexities of relationships and human emotions. Unlike Hollywood films, which sometimes focus on fast-paced action or superficial plot points, French films tend to develop more introspective, nuanced storylines. They allow time for characters to explore their inner worlds, questioning who they are and their place in the world. French cinema is often seen as a mirror to human emotion and existential questioning, providing audiences with more than just entertainment, but also food for thought. In a faceless video format, the storytelling approach mirrors the intricacies of French films. While traditional cinema often depends on facial expressions to communicate emotion, a faceless video encourages the audience to engage more deeply with the environment, body language, and the atmosphere. This method forces viewers to focus on what's unsaid, what's felt, and what's implied, just as French cinema does through its subtle portrayals of character struggles and triumphs. Without facial expressions to guide the viewer's understanding, the emotional depth is conveyed through more abstract methods: sound, lighting, movement, and setting. These elements together create an immersive experience where the absence of faces highlights the internal, often silent, emotional journey of the characters. The faceless video approach connects with the broader tradition of French storytelling, where the focus is not just on external conflict, but also on the emotional and psychological states of the characters. The face, often the first thing a viewer connects with in traditional cinema, is removed here, forcing a deeper exploration of other storytelling tools. Without the reliance on facial cues, filmmakers use the environment to communicate the characters' emotions, pushing the audience to focus on the intangible aspects of storytelling. This fosters a more intuitive, introspective experience, which aligns with the delicate and often melancholic nature of French narratives. In this context, the faceless approach isn't a limitation but a tool that enhances the story. It opens up possibilities for subtlety and symbolic imagery, where every object, every movement, and every silence carries meaning. Just as French films often leave spaces for the viewer to interpret and reflect, a faceless video works in much the same way, prompting an emotional response without the need for direct expression. This method also aligns with the visual poetry that is so common in French filmmaking, where every shot, every frame, and every sound has a deeper layer of meaning. By using a faceless approach, this style of storytelling creates an atmosphere where the narrative is felt rather than merely observed. The characters' inner experiences, those hidden desires, quiet struggles, and the profound moments of realization, are conveyed through the details. It invites the audience to immerse themselves in the emotional current of the story, much like a French film does, without relying on obvious cues or clear-cut answers. This allows for a more personal connection to the material, where the meaning of the story is often open-ended, offering each viewer a chance to interpret it in their own way. Ultimately, the purpose of faceless storytelling in a French cinema context is to foster an emotional and intellectual connection with the audience that transcends surface-level appearances. It's a method that highlights the core of human experience, the internal conflicts, the silent victories, and the complex web of emotions that define what it means to be human. Just like in many French films, the absence of the face doesn't take away from the story. Instead, it deepens the experience, allowing the narrative to resonate on a more personal and meaningful level. Through this approach, storytelling becomes not just an act of communication, but an invitation to explore the depths of the human condition. French cinema is deeply rooted in its exploration of love, relationships, and the complexities that define human connections. Love, in its many forms, is a central theme in French storytelling. It often transcends the conventional portrayal of romance seen in mainstream cinema and instead examines the nuanced and sometimes painful nature of human relationships. These films highlight love as an emotion that can be both uplifting and tragic, complex yet simple, and fleeting yet everlasting. French directors don't shy away from exploring the messiness of relationships, capturing the beauty and vulnerability of human connection with precision. In many French films, love is not depicted as an idealized or straightforward experience, but as a complicated journey marked by moments of joy, conflict, misunderstanding, and growth. This portrayal resonates with audiences because it reflects the real nature of relationships. French filmmakers often portray love in its rawest form, sometimes unspoken, other times dramatically complicated by external or internal forces. Rather than focusing solely on the positive aspects of love, French cinema delves into its more challenging aspects: unrequited love, heartbreak, jealousy, and the subtle shifts that occur between partners as their lives evolve. In this context, French films also explore how these relationships shape the individuals involved. Love can be transformative, sometimes bringing about personal revelations or changes in behavior. Characters might begin their journey unaware of their emotional needs, only to realize through their relationships how they have been shaped by past experiences, insecurities, or desires. The absence of facial expressions in a faceless video serves as a perfect parallel to this, as the complexity of relationships is conveyed through nuanced gestures, actions, and the environment rather than explicit facial emotions. This absence mirrors the silent, unspoken moments in relationships, those times when what is felt is more important than what is said. Another layer of complexity in French storytelling is the concept of existentialism, which often accompanies the exploration of love. Many French films challenge the idea of romantic love as a simplistic or idealized emotion and instead present it as part of a larger existential question about the meaning of life and identity. In these films, the characters' personal struggles, particularly in the context of love, often reveal their search for a deeper sense of purpose or self-understanding. Love, rather than being a mere plot device, becomes a tool for characters to explore their own existence, questioning who they are and what they truly seek. The power of visual storytelling lies in its ability to convey emotion, character development, and narrative depth without relying on spoken words. In French cinema, this technique is mastered, using every frame, every element within the environment, to communicate what words cannot express. This approach is particularly potent when faces are absent from the frame, as it forces filmmakers to rely on other aspects of the narrative to convey the character's emotional journey. In a faceless video, the absence of visible facial expressions becomes a deliberate choice to highlight the other aspects of storytelling, such as body language, movement, and the environment. This shift in focus allows the audience to engage with the story in a more visceral, subtle way. One of the key techniques in faceless storytelling is the use of body language to express emotions. In the absence of facial cues, every movement, posture, and gesture becomes loaded with meaning. A slight shift in stance, a hand that trembles, or the way a character moves through a space. All of these elements become crucial in conveying the emotional state of the character. French cinema has long utilized this approach, often placing character in a setting where their body language becomes the primary means of communication. A character's physicality can reveal their internal conflicts, desires, and struggles, creating a deeper connection with the audience as they interpret these visual cues. The use of space and environment plays a similarly crucial role in conveying meaning in faceless storytelling. Just as French directors often use the environment to reflect a character's emotional state, a faceless video relies heavily on the surroundings to communicate mood, tension, or even character development. The empty space around a character, the lighting, and the positioning within the environment can all contribute to the emotional resonance of the narrative. For example, a wide, empty space can evoke feelings of loneliness or isolation, while a cramped, cluttered room might communicate a sense of confinement or internal chaos. In French cinema, the environment becomes an extension of the character's psychological state, and this is no different in a faceless video, where the setting speaks louder than any facial expression. The symbolism of objects and elements within the environment also enhances the storytelling. In French films, seemingly insignificant objects often take on great symbolic meaning. A flower, a chair, or a piece of clothing can carry layers of emotional weight, subtly reinforcing the themes of the film. In the context of a faceless video, these objects can serve as metaphors for a character's emotions or desires. They might represent a lost memory, a pivotal moment, or an unspoken truth. By focusing on these symbols, the narrative becomes richer and more layered, allowing the viewer to connect with the story on a deeper level. The absence of a face encourages the audience to look beyond the obvious and focus on these details, which are often overlooked in more traditional forms of storytelling. Sound also plays a crucial role in faceless storytelling, particularly in French cinema, where the use of sound is often as important as the visuals. The absence of facial expressions means that sound becomes the primary medium through which emotions are conveyed. Music, ambient noise, and even silence become tools for expressing what cannot be seen. In French films, directors often use sound to amplify the emotional tone of a scene, creating an atmosphere that envelopes the audience. A simple sound, like the ticking of a clock or the rustle of paper, can create tension or evoke nostalgia. In a faceless video, sound can fill in the gaps left by the absence of facial expression, allowing the audience to feel the emotional beats of the story without needing explicit visual cues. The absence of faces in a video format also shifts the focus onto the more abstract aspects of the narrative. Without the immediate recognition of a character's emotions through facial expressions, the viewer must engage more actively with the story, interpreting body language, sound, and environment to understand the emotional landscape. This encourages a more participatory experience, where the audience fills in the emotional gaps, reflecting on their own interpretations and experiences. This level of engagement is similar to the introspective nature of many French films, where the viewer is invited to make sense of the story through their own emotional and intellectual lens. Ultimately, faceless storytelling draws on the same principles as French cinema's rich tradition of visual expression. By removing the most obvious form of emotional communication, facial expressions, it challenges the viewer to look deeper, to connect with the story through more subtle cues. Body language, environment, sound, and symbolism all work in harmony to create a layered narrative that is both emotionally engaging and intellectually stimulating. This method of storytelling not only resonates with the techniques used in French films, but also mirrors the complexity and depth of the human experience, allowing the audience to engage with the story on a profound level. Through this, faceless storytelling becomes a powerful tool in conveying emotion, inviting the viewer to connect with the narrative in ways that go beyond the surface and into the very heart of the story. French cinema has long been a source of inspiration for filmmakers worldwide, influencing the narrative style and techniques used in films across the globe. The emphasis on character-driven stories, subtle emotional depth, and the exploration of existential themes has led to a shift in how stories are told and experienced in modern cinema. The faceless video format, with its minimalist yet emotionally powerful approach, draws directly from the traditions of French storytelling, offering a fresh perspective on the way films can connect with audiences. As French cinema continues to evolve, its impact on global storytelling techniques, particularly in the context of faceless narratives, is undeniable. One of the key ways French cinema has influenced international storytelling is through its emphasis on atmosphere and mood. In French films, the environment, sound, and visual composition are often just as important as the plot itself. This focus on the mood allows for a more immersive, emotionally driven experience that resonates deeply with audiences. In a faceless video, this approach is even more pronounced, as the absence of facial expressions forces the viewer to engage more fully with the atmosphere and setting. The emotional experience is no longer tied to the characters' visible reactions, but is instead conveyed through the spaces they inhabit and the subtle cues within the environment. This technique, borrowed from French cinema, encourages viewers to interpret the story in a more personal way, using their own emotions and experiences to fill in the gaps.